Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, Need the Seats, Staged Before Inspection Sure. So to start this story, I work at an MRO, maintenance, repair, and overhaul, whom I shall not name, although as an MRO we usually do maintenance for airlines at a cheaper cost so the airlines don't need to pay for more of their own high-paid mechanics. In our company we have a warehouse and a hangar. The warehouse, when shipping things for the hangar such as parts and tooling etc., can be slow if things are not quite by the book. Understandable, although we have deadlines and things need to get done or we get fined for not delivering a plane to the airline on time. So the main people from the warehouse I deal with a few times a week are inspectors who come and look at seats to verify the part numbers and serial numbers on the seats when they are delivered from a vendor to be put on the airplane. So my team handles unboxing them and placing them in order for maintenance to put them on the plane or moving them to storage if needed. In most cases we would take the top of the box off, and remove the straps for the box so you can see the seat, and all that is left is some plastic that goes over the seat and a cardboard bottom with a small lip. We never organize them until the inspectors look at them, since I can do this part about 20 minutes after they get off the truck, and it can speed up the inspection process, which if anything is found can lead to a longer wait on the seats to be able to go on the plane. Now I have never met the lead in the warehouse that is in charge of the inspectors. But one day she comes to inspect the seats. Let's call her Julie. Julie comes over to see the seats and train a new guy on how to inspect them, and I unbox them as usual and leave the bottoms on and do not organize them. Julie comes to my desk complaining they are unsafe to inspect and states they need to be organized and on cardboard, long sheets we roll out without any lip like the box has, and space them out so it is easier for them to inspect. I respond and tell her that it will probably take an extra hour and a half every time seats arrive if we do it this way. She wouldn't budge and insisted they be put this way. Cue malicious compliance. I agree and warn her, and she decides to make the call herself and tell me it has to be this way. Well, remember in the start I mentioned the process after inspection takes a long time if issues are found, which they usually have some partial numbers or something and need to verify them, which takes a few hours. Also I mentioned that the airplanes need to leave at a certain time or we will get a large fine from the airline. This resulted in 4 airplanes leaving late due to seats. This may surprise you, but an hour and a half extra halts maintenance more than you'd think. Not to mention how long it takes to make room for the spaced out seats in the hangar. My boss came to ask me why the seats were being held so long and asked if we were slacking in boxing. I told him not at all. The warehouse said we have to organize them first and waste time, so I obliged. My boss was furious and went to the warehouse to talk to the manager in charge of the place. Not much came to Julie, although I get to unbox them the old way and she never questions me anymore, which is nice. The next one is titled, The Pool and the Game. I once worked front desk at a public pool. It was horrible, but one interaction stands out, both for how malicious my compliance was and for the fallout. Our swim team had just launched and parents came to sign their kids up for every single thing they could because it meant after-school activities and freedom. Yay! My responsibility was the form. First, I had to help design the form. Because the design the city gave us, made by a woman who was making more than minimum wage as a pool desk caddy, was not enough for my boss, and my dumb butt let her know I could make MS Word sit up and do tricks for e-cookies. Once the form was approved, and by then I was taking proofs home to burn as catharsis, my job was to make sure that every single parent had signed the form and paid their fee. Enter Daddy T. His daughter was on swim team, and he had this charismatic grin and confident way of speaking that immediately put my alarm bells into danger. Will Robinson. He was a little too smiley, a little too happy, and vaguely familiar. There was something kind of off about him. I wasn't sure what it was, but it made me want to be as far under his radar as possible. Unfortunately, while his kid was signed up for swim team, he still needed to sign the form and pay for her entry, which meant I needed to interact with him. Most females, and not too few males, know that gazelle on the veldt feeling. Something is off. Something had the hair on the back of your neck standing on end. You don't know what it is, and the rules of social interaction demand you keep your mouth shut and play nice. The guy spends a few minutes of charismatic smiles. I had never seen teeth like that outside of Channel 10 news presenters, acting like he's having trouble reading the form. I designed the form over the course of multiple painful weeks and know you would have to be severely brain damaged to have issues understanding it. My boss had me dumb it down to the point that a kindergarten student could know where to scribble a name approximation. And this guy is well spoken and clean cut, and he's got the sharpest and most familiar gaze I've ever seen. I cannot think of any reason for him to be this obtuse honestly. And I begin to suspect he is hitting on me. Which for multiple reasons has me creeped out by several orders of magnitude. I just want this guy to go away. Finally, after agonizing minutes of him struggling with a form that a 2-year-old could sign, he hands it back and says, still with that same confident, charismatic smile, "Read it to me." I was at a low point in my life. I hated every single thing about my life. I had untreated PTSD, and the thought of anyone hitting on me made me want to go scrub a layer of skin off. The realization that this guy had me pinned to a desk I could not leave until he signed the form made me want to punch him. But I needed this job, and my boss would grind me into flour and turn me into concession stand specials if I even pretended to stand up for myself. So instead, I complied. I shifted into happy customer service mode and I read him that goddamn form. I summarized legalese. I dumbed things down from kindergarten to preschool. I did it all with the sweetest smile I could muster and tried to be about as asexual as the desktop computer right next to the counter window. I made it a point to be the most cheerfully helpful person, and hoped that somehow this would translate to go the hell away. And it worked. He signed. He left. I breathed a sigh of relief. Until next week, when the form had to be supplemented by the sign-in sheet and the whole ducking song and dance repeated itself. He asked me to read him the goddamn sign-in sheet. And I did. With a smile. That couldn't have been more forced if he had a gun to my head. At this point I was heaping lit coals on his head and practicing my obtuse as duck face. I might be a captive audience, but I would be damned before I let him know he got to me. I maliciously treated him like any other customer. I hated to see him arrive, and when he left I cheered, and this went on for weeks, because every session the boss would need a new form signed, and every session that guy asked me to read it to him, and I managed it by channeling my inner robot. I even began highlighting his daughter's name. What kind of crap dad forgets his daughter's name? And our interactions became a game. Him trying to get to me. Me refusing to be got. It almost felt like chess. Then it came time to distribute the swim team gear, and that brought a whole new set of forms. Which meant that guy asked me to read him every single one of them. And just when I'm contemplating leaping out the nearest window while doing full-body silkwood decontam, he suddenly meets my eyes, and this layer of pretense I hadn't ever noticed drops away. He has tears, literal tears, in his eyes. And he says, "Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much." See, the entire time I had been maliciously complying with him, by being the best reader ever. I'd been struck by how familiar he looked. But I didn't ever really watch the news. I just sat and read books while my parents watched it instead. Which is why I didn't recognize our local weatherman when he began bringing his daughter to swim practice. It's also why I didn't know why he had recently retired. He'd been diagnosed with a malignant brain tumor, you see. And they'd just finished a round of surgery and chemo to save his life that they weren't sure would actually work. His odds sucked. It really had been all over the news. They even gave him a really nice, heartbreaking sound-off that I never watched because of my own depression and isolation. I found it on YouTube later. It's the kind of thing all of us would praise someone doing out memory. He thanked me, because ever since his surgery, his ability to function had been compromised. He could mask most of the damage with his charisma and training, and usually could fake it till you make it with the best of them, but he'd lost a lot of his capacity to read. It was a struggle he'd obviously never faced before, and it frustrated him that after all his college education and decades being the face of the local weather, he suddenly couldn't even read a basic form for his daughter's swim team. And he was so thankful, he was crying, that I was taking so much time out of my day to help him. And not just to help him, but to be so patronizing. I had treated him like he was normal. He said that I made him feel sort of whole again. He made every effort to make it clear he was genuinely, sincerely grateful for how helpful I had been. And I am suddenly reviewing every insult I thought about him. Every time I questioned his mental capacity or quality as a parent. He was so low that what I meant as a mockery and a punishment was, to him, a gift. I made him feel normal. There aren't words for that kind of shame. I thought it was a game. I really did. People still talk about how he touched lives. I know he touched mine. The next one is titled, "Don't Tell Me How to Do This. Let Me Learn." Okay. I had a boss who told me not to tell him how to put a computer together because he already knows how and I don't need your unsolicited advice. Okay. Strap yourselves in for the background. I am a woman. In the tech industry. Do you already see where this is going? Not only was I a tech at this place, I was the tech. The one who trained 80% of the techs, had the highest numbers in district, and top 10 in the territory. But I always went by my last name. So, everyone who wasn't physically in my store, thought I was a male. Due to circumstances, we ended up getting a new manager from another store out of state. His first day was on my day off. My co-workers told me he wanted 2 hours with each of us to learn our thoughts on diagnosing issues, and he was really eager to learn from us. He was especially interested to learn from the top tech who he heard about in his previous store. Until he learned I was a woman. He did 2-hour sessions with all the other techs but me. He always went to the male techs with questions. He tried to make me work the counter to just check computers in when I was one of only 3 full-time repair techs and we had 7 counter techs. He tried to make me do his paperwork on several occasions. He also started trying to repair computers by himself, even though that was not his job. He would leave computers half repaired with no notes, then write up whatever tech he thought should pick it up where I left off. Idiot. The whole team hated him and started making remarks of, "Well, Op could fix this if you asked her." Or, "I think Op fixed something similar in an hour and you've been at this for 2 days?" And other phrases to upset him that a woman knew more than him. This was the perfect setup to one of my favorite moments of my career. Manager got it in his head that he was going to do something to prove he knew his stuff, so when a customer came in wanting a custom-built computer, which we weren't supposed to do, he grabbed the opportunity. He helped the guy pick out the parts, compare prices, and sold him the labor to put it all together. He also told me he was going to build it in my repair space, and he was doing this alone. And, I will never forget this. Don't tell me how to do this. Let me learn. Oh. I will. Cue the manager putting this machine together on the bench behind me while I continued my work, just waiting. Manager has it together, hits the power switch. Computer turns on, then off. Then on, then off. He unplugs, then takes it apart. Then together again. Same result. I can hear the wheels turning behind me, but he told me not to give him advice. So, I keep working with my mouth shut. Let him ask me when he's good and ready. He then believes parts must be bad. So, he has the customer send parts back, wait for the new ones, then try again. Same result. This continues for 2 months. He has the customer, who is obviously very angry at this point, send every single part back. Then have a whole new set of parts delivered. He has promised the customer this is the last time. This time it will work. He definitely knows what he is doing. The day arrives where the customer brings in the parts. The manager is there. I am there. I stop repairing computers as he puts the final part in, and I lean against my bench to watch what is about to happen. How could I not? He hits the power. Same result. He is furious. He throws the screwdriver across the bench, denting the wall, and curses so loudly I am sure a customer heard. He puts his hands on either side of the machine, head down, shoulders slumped, utterly defeated. In a quiet, oh so quiet voice he asks, "Op, what's wrong with it?" Me, the motherboard and processor aren't compatible without a BIOS update. Manager, how long have you known this? Me, since you first turned it on 2 months ago. He turns. He is red in the face. Veins are bulging, and I'm pretty sure he thought about decking me for a second before composing himself with a very, very deep breath. Manager, why didn't you say anything then? Me, smiling sweetly, because you told me not to, and to let you learn. So, have you learned? He stormed off, and out of the store. He ended up taking 2 personal days, and I ended up building a new PC that actually worked. Customer was cool once I explained everything and even showed them how I cable managed to allow the best cooling and looks with their clear case. It's a story that ended up being the legendary story to tell all new techs. I left the company a few months later for a higher paying job, and that manager ended up getting fired due to my GM believing him the reason for my leaving. I never corrected that perspection. After all, how else will he learn? The next one is titled, Moving Patients is a Times Affair. I work in a fairly large Level 1 trauma hospital on the East Coast. My main job is moving patients to their testing areas or procedures. Take Mr. Smith to X-ray, Ms. Gray to pre-op, you get the gist. Now what I was shown during my hiring is if you hold up an operation things get expensive. I brought a patient 20 minutes late for their test, CDIF caused many nasty symptoms, and my manager told me that those 20 minutes had cost the hospital over $35,000 in time lost. 2 doctors, 1 anesthesiologist, and 3 nurse, big money. Now every job we do is timed. From the moment we accept, put in progress, and complete. All done with a little in-house phone system. We have codes that delay those times for a massive range of things. Everything from drawing blood, getting meds, and patient is not in their room, is on a list for us to use. When we start we are told that if anything slows us down, we put in the codes. Also, if the job was delayed more than 5 minutes, we were to cancel it. None of us did that. If it was going to take longer to put the code in, then it was to do the action, it wasn't worth it. And if it took a nurse a few extra moments to put in a new IV, no one would bat an eye. Well, after this incident we had a department meeting and we were told from our top manager that our times have suffered recently. From now on, if the job is delayed 5 minutes you must cancel it. Anyone who doesn't will be written up for insubordination. Now in my job, insubordination is very serious. You can be on a last chance with one of them. Before this our times were great, we had all been here long enough to know how to work our system, so we gave the nurses time and still kept ours low. However, our department had just hired about a dozen new people, effectively doubling our shift and, of course, making our times worse cause they didn't know how to yet. Cue compliance. In one shift I must have cancelled at least 15 jobs. They were put right back in and were finished within half an hour usually, but it still cost us time. And every one of my co-workers did the same. Within 24 hours, I heard my manager talking with some other supervisors. He had gotten over 145 emails from nurses and complaints from patients. My next shift, he called us all back in and told us cancelling the jobs will now only be done with your supervisor's approval. We will go by each situation and see if we can give you more time as needed. I still work here and I still think if my 20-minute delay cost $35,000, how much did the hours we set the hours back cost? Don't fix what isn't broke. The last one is titled, My Boss Wanted Me to Train My Replacement but I didn't work there anymore. I used to work in a grocery store back in 2016. I was 16 to 17 at the time. I don't work retail anymore, but I wanted to share this story I still remember to this day. It was a pretty normal night right before the end of my shift. I was one of the few closers at my store. So it was just me, my supervisor, and a cashier. I worked the self-checkout customer service desk. My supervisor had just collected the tills and was in the back counting, and I was starting my rounds to take back the non-perishables that were left at the registers. I also might add that our store had terrible camera placement. Basically it showed all the registers, and the supervisor's office door, which is where the safe was. This is important later. After putting up all the items that were left at the registers, I did my final checks of the store to make sure there were no misplaced, damaged item on the floor. I find a case of beer that was leaking in our beer, wine section, and since I wasn't sure how damaged the bottom of the cardboard case was, I had to drag it to the front, so I could inform my supervisor about the damaged item before taking it to the back. We kept a carts full of damaged items to be taken out by the morning crew. Since the supervisor's office is locked while they are counting the tills, I call over to her and let her know that there was a damaged case of beer and I was taking it to the back. She responds with an absent, "Okay, sounds good." So I take it to the back, place it with the rest of the damaged items, and go back to the front to see if there is anything else my supervisor needs me to do before I clock out. There isn't. Next couple days are fine as I finish up the week and wait for the next week's schedule to be posted. And I find out that I'm not scheduled for the next week. I figure there must have been a mistake as there was someone working at the same grocery store who shared my first name. I go upstairs to my manager's office and ask him about the schedule and why I wasn't scheduled. He responds with a, "Oh, my bad, I forgot to tell you that you are suspended until the investigation is over. By the way, can you train your replacement today on the self-checkout customer service desk?" Me, confused and annoyed at the moment, don't really pay attention to the second part of his comment, ask him what he was talking about. My manager: "We caught you stealing the case of beer that you took to the back, and until the police investigation is complete you won't be working here anymore. Please turn in your uniform, name tag, and badge." I am furious, but I decide that I would just go with bit of MC in this situation. "Well, bossman, I took the damaged case of beer to the back to be thrown out in the morning as per procedure. But since I won't be working here anymore, I guess you will just have to find someone else to train my replacement, since I clearly can't be trusted." I was the only person who could train someone for the customer service desk other than him. His jaw dropped. The look on his face was priceless as I took off my uniform and handed him my name tag and override card. I then proceeded to walk out, get in my car and drive home. About 2 years later I joined the army, and I'm going for a job that required a TSI security clearance. Guess what shows up? That suspension with an unfinished police report and the tapes from the security camera. I sit there with my interviewer as we watch the tape together, clearly showing that I did not steal anything. Needless to say, I was approved for my clearance. I ask if I can get a copy of the tape, and my interviewer agrees. It took 2 years, but I finally had the evidence I needed to sue for wrongful termination. But as the time is well over the statute of limitation, I am unable to actually do anything about it. Either way, I decide to go pay my old workplace a visit over my Christmas block leave, and a couple people recognize me, including my old boss. He tells me that thieves like me aren't welcome in his store, and that I need to leave or he would be calling the police. I told him to call them, and that his claim would surely hold up when I showed them the copy of the video footage of me stealing. The store had one of my favorite muffins, and honestly I really wanted one since they are only made there. The police got called and did nothing, and I got 3 muffins free of charge thanks to my favorite supervisor. Worth it. Thanks for listening.